Yeah, Bismillah.
Bismillah. 16th lesson on Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's prayer described.
Continuation from last week regarding reciting in the loud prayer and in the silent prayer. We have said, as a correct opinion that we follow, that the person in the imam or behind the imam who is reciting loud, he would not recite the Fatiha. But he would recite the Fatiha in the silent prayer or even in the loud prayer when he's not able to hear the imam for any reason. So he's allowed also to recite the Fatiha. He has to recite the Fatiha. So that is in the case as well if the imam had left a gap and is not supposed to do so. So preoccupy yourself as well through reciting the Fatiha. Now we go into the next title, which is obligation to recite in the silent prayer. Now,
the obligation to recite in the quiet prayers. As for the quiet prayers, he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam urged them to recite during them. Jabir radiallahu anhu said, we used to recite behind the Imam in Dhuhr and Asr, Surah Al-Fatiha and another surah in the first 2 Raka and Surah Al-Fatiha in the last 2.
and surah.
However, he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam dissuaded them from confusing him with their recitation when he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam prayed Dhuhr with his companions and said afterwards, which of you recited Sabbih Isma Rabbikal A'la? Someone said, it was I, but I was only intending nothing but good by doing so. So he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, I knew that someone was contending with me by it. In another hadith, they used to recite behind the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam loudly, so he said, you have mixed up my recitation of the Quran. He Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also said, truly, the person praying is privately consulting with his Lord. So he should be careful about what he consults him with, and you should not recite the Quran loudly over each other. He Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also used to say, whoever recited a harf, letter from the book of Allah, it will count for him as one good deed, and a good deed is worth 10 times over. I do not mean that alif, lam, mim is a harf, but alif is a harf, lam is a harf, and mim is a harf.
In this title, the Sheikh had added to what has been previously mentioned regarding that the person behind the Imam is not to recite in the loud recitation, but also he must recite in the silent recitation. That is why he had made this title, not to make you think that you're not allowed to recite even, or you're not supposed to recite even in the silent prayer. So when, if you remember the last hadith that we have read, and Abu Hurairah elaborated after the Fajr prayer, he said the people, they used to recite when the Prophet ﷺ does not recite loud, and they stopped reciting whenever the Prophet ﷺ that he recites silently. So they will recite when he recites silently, and they will not recite when he recites loudly. So he says here that the recitation of the person behind the Imam silently, when the Imam is reciting silently, is a must. That's why he had made this title, to make sure that you don't make it like an option. So you must recite behind the Imam when he's reciting silently. For verily, that hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah, when he said that we used to recite in the Dhuhr and the Asr, all of it to be silent prayer. After, behind the Imam, in the first 2 Rak'ah with the Fatiha and a surah, and the last 2 Rak'ah with the Fatiha. And there is also other hadiths where the Prophet of Allah used to recite also a surah in the last 2 Rak'ah after the Fatiha. But when one of the companions recited loudly, and he started saying loud, so audible even to the Prophet of Allah who was in front of him, I don't know whether he was in the first row or was he in the rows which are behind, but he was reciting so loud that the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, he said, who is reciting Sabbih Isma Rabbika al-A'la? So a man said, yes, me, Messenger of Allah, and I intended good. Yes, your intention is good, but your action is no good. So that the person, you need to know, when the person corrects him regarding an issue, you need to know that I'm not correcting you because of your intention. Your intention could be good, mashallah, but I'm correcting you because of your action. And that is why the Prophet ﷺ, he did not pay attention to the last statement of the man, and the man's name is not mentioned, the companion, because we're not really concerned about the man's name, concerned about what has happened in that situation. So he said, the Prophet ﷺ to him, I knew that someone is contempting with me, is actually competing, or is he trying to pull my recitation away from me? I'm not concentrating on my recitation, all of that. So we understand that when the Prophet ﷺ had heard a man saying to him, Ma sha'Allah wa shi'ta ya Rasulullah, if Allah wills and you are also Messenger of Allah if you will, the Prophet of Allah definitely knew that that companion doesn't want to make the Prophet of Allah equal to Allah. But actually, he had corrected his wordings. He did not look at his intention. So the Prophet of Allah, he said, أَجَعَلْتَنِي لِلَّهِ نِدًّا, did you make me equal, a rival to God? So that is why when we correct something, we don't correct it because of what is the intention. We correct it because of the action. So regardless of what is your intention, if you did a mistake, you have to be corrected. And don't make your intention as an excuse to say that you can't really correct me, I intended good. No. Intention is one of the conditions of accepting the deed, but the second condition has to be there, which is following the Prophet ﷺ. In this case, the man, he said to the Prophet of Allah, he said, I did not intend anything except for good when I recited Sabbih Isma Rabbika al-A'la. So the Prophet of Allah, in a nice way, he had corrected him. He said, I knew that there was a man dragging my recitation away. I'm not concentrating on my own recitation. So that is after this, in the hadith, which is the same hadith, they used to recite behind the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another hadith, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam once also was reciting. Companions used to recite loudly. He said to them, you have confused me in my recitation. Khallattum alayhi. You have made me actually to mix up with my recitation. You should not really do so. So in that hadith, it does not say to the companion to stop completely from reciting, but it's actually to make it loud, make it audible, to make it disturbing to the others. If the Imam himself, the Prophet of Allah, had heard it, so what about the person who's next to that person who's reciting loud? And I'll tell you what, I just had been, when I came here, and I was reciting as well, doing my Maghrib prayer, which I missed because I'm a traveler. I was praying, and I was praying a bit loud, and was somebody as well praying loud next to me. I couldn't really recite my own recitation, even though he's correct because he's doing it on his own, I'm doing my own. But it just reminded me to add this to our explanation here, that he was reciting loud, just a bit. I couldn't really recite except what he's reciting. He pulled me towards his surah that he's reciting after the Fatiha. That's the power of the disturbance. So this chapter title is to say to you that in the silent recitation you have no option, except that is what? You have to recite the Fatiha and to recite a surah after the Fatiha, the first two Raka. Also from the sunnah to recite a surah after the Fatiha in the last two Raka. And in that recitation of yours, you're going to get a reward. He who recites a letter, then he gets a hasana, and the hasana gets then multiple. Alif Lam Mim is not one letter. Alif Lam Mim are three letters. You get 3 hasana multiplied by 10, that's 30 hasana. Alif, Lam, and Mim. Now, and by the way, there was a man also, which is a hadith sahih, that the Prophet ﷺ, he was reciting, and he was reciting in the silent prayer, and a man, he was behind him, he was reciting as well. So he said to him, are you reciting loudly? For verily, make your Lord to hear what you're reciting, but don't make me hear. Make your Lord. So when you recite, you're reciting towards your Lord. You're making Allah Azza wa Jalla to hear you, not you to make, not to make other people to hear you. So that's what he said to him, and that is why the denial was because of the loud recitation. Now,
So there's a note on this about the opinions of the Imams.
Go on, Shafi.
The view of the validity of recitation behind the Imam in quiet but not loud prayers was taken by Imam Shafi rahimahullah initially, and by Muhammad rahimahullah, the student of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, in a narration from him which was preferred by Shaykh Ali al-Qari and other shuyukh of the madhab. It was also the position of, among others, the Imam Zuhri, Malik ibn al-Mubarak, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, several of the muhaddithin, and it is the preference of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah.
I add to the power of saying that we recite in the silent prayer when the Imam is silent. I add, this is very powerful as well. This is what the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he says, إِنَّمَا جُعِلَ الْإِمَامُ لِيُؤْتَمَّ بِهِ. Verily, Imam was made to be followed. If he has to make takbir, then make takbir. And if he recites, then be silent. So what does that mean? If he does not recite, you recite. So when he says, وَإِذَا قَرَأَ فَأَنصِتُ, when he recites, be quiet. That means if he does not recite, you have to recite. Now, التأمين وجهر الإمام به.
The Amin and the Imams saying it loudly. When he sallallahu alaihi wasallam finished reciting Al-Fatiha, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say Amin loudly, prolonging his voice.
Amin, correct. And some of the recitations they say Amin. Right, so this is the Amin of the Imam is to be said loudly. And the Shaykh had no doubt to indicate that, in contrast to what the Hanafi adopt, which is that the Imam does not say the Amin loudly, because the Imam, the Prophet ﷺ, it is being narrated from him with authentic chains, number of hadith, where he made it audible to the people. Amin. Now,
he sallallahu alaihi wasallam also used to order the congregation to say Amin when the Imam says غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَالضَّالِّينَ, not of those who receive your anger, nor of those who go astray. Then say Amin. For the angels say Amin, and Imam says Amin. In another narration, when the Imam says Amin, say Amin. So he whose Amin coincides with the Amin of the angels. In another narration, when one of you says Amin in prayer and the angels in the sky says Amin, and they coincide, his past sins are forgiven. In another hadith...
Can you just give me the notes there, please, for that?
The note is Bukhari, Muslim, and Nasai, Darimi. The additional wordings are reported by the latter two, and prove that this hadith cannot justify that the Imam does not say Amin, as reported from Malik. Hence, Ibn Hajar says in Fath al-Bari, it clearly shows that the Imam says Amin. Ibn Abdul Bar says in Tamhid, volume 7, page 13, it is the view of the majority of the Muslims, including Malik, as the people of Medina report from him. For it is authentic from Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam through the ahadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, which is this one, and that of Wa'il ibn Hujr radiallahu anhu, the previous one.
Right, so this is all of it just to say that the Imam says Amin. Now, if you look at the hadith, and we're going to investigate it, he says here, if the Imam says, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, this is the end of the Fatiha, he says, say Amin. Now, when you say Amin, do you say it loud, or you don't say it loud? That's going to be discussed in a minute. Say Amin. So you have to say it. Loud or not loud, that's what going to be discussed in a minute. Then he says, فَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ تَقُولُ أَمِينَ. For verily the angels, they say Amin. You don't hear the angels Amin, but they say Amin. And you have to believe that they say Amin upon hearing the Imam saying وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. That means the angel, what they're doing? They're praying. And we have another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he said that if the person makes a prayer on top of the mountain and he makes adhan, there will be an army of angels behind him praying, and even you can't see the end of them. That's if you could see the angel, you can't. All of them praying behind you. So they are saying behind you, Amin, behind the Imam. So they are praying with the Imam. So, he says here, and if, another narration, he says, فَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ تَقُولُ أَمِينَ, for verily the angels say Amin, and the Imam says Amin. And another narration says, إِذَا أَمَّنَ الْإِمَامِ, if the Imam said Amin, then make Amin. Now the word then, is it then afterwards, or to synchronize? That's another issue as well. He who had synchronized his Amin, the Amin of the angel. So we have now definite answer, or definite regarding decision, that our Amin, if it synchronizes with the Amin of whom? The angel. Now I don't know, when does the angel make Amin? I don't know, because can't hear it. Another narration he says, this is all of it explains one another. He says, if one of you in the prayer said Amin, and the angels in the heavens say Amin, and the two synchronize, all his previous sins will be forgiven. So now I need to make my Amin to synchronize with the Amin of the angels in the heaven. So the angels will not pray and saying Amin as well. Because every angel who is an angel assigned to a particular task, he would all the time invoke forgiveness and say dua to the believer. So the angels, they're all the time invoking forgiveness for the believer. And that is why when the person deprives himself from the prayer, he deprives himself from a lot of good. So he says, the angels in the heavens say Amin. And if they had synchronized with the Amin of the angels, then your sins of the previous one will be forgiven. What a simple thing to do. That is, to make sure that my sins to be forgiven, is to synchronize with the angel. But when does the angel make Amin? That hadith which is said before, it says here, that the angels say Amin, and the Imam say Amin. So in that, some of the scholars differ, or some of the Shuyukh, they say, you say the Amin after the Imam. Because the Amin of the Imam is after the angel. The Amin of the angels are after the Imam of after the Amin of the Imam. Now that's a very big controversial issue. And I would not make myself as a person to decide which one is correct. But I would say that looking at what I have been looking, if I adapt the opinion of our Shaykh Muhammad Nasir al-Din al-Albani regarding the issue of synchronization, I haven't really touched yet whether to say it loud or not. If I want to now to go with the Amin of the Shaykh al-Albani, is that I will hold my breath after the Imam says وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ and he says I will go with him, because I know that the angels say Amin with the Imam, and that's according to the Shaykh. And I have to synchronize with the Imam in order my Amin will be synchronized already by default with the angels, and then I'll get the sin forgiveness from the past sins. So as soon as the Imam says وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, hold your breath, and then when he triggers the go with the That's the opinion of Shaykh. The opinion of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen and others, that they say that إِذَا أَمْنَ الْإِمَامِ فَأَمِّنُوا, that means if he had finished the ta'meen, you start with what? Your Amin. And they have actually brought a proof for that, which for me does not stand, because the word fa, it doesn't mean it has to be afterwards. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that after you finish this, you do that. You could be doing it at the same time. So that is, in terms of language, the proof is not really a strong proof. So we are actually in something which is, I would say, very strong controversial. And I would not really charge myself against someone who is adapting the other opinion, because I know that it is as well, the other side, they have their own as well proofs. So I would say my Amin, if it synchronizes with the angels, that's definitely, I will get my sins forgiven. But here, when do you say the Amin is with the Imam or after the Imam? That's where our Shaykh al-Albani in this book, he says, you synchronize with the Imam. When he says you say don't precede him. And that is what so many people would do. If you preceded the Imam, you will be losing the ta'meen regardless of the opinions of the both scholars. Do you understand me? Whether the scholars will say that you hold until the Imam says Amin and finish. Okay? Okay? So, or you lose the person of the Shaykh when he says that you have to synchronize with the Amin of the Imam. So you'll be losing on both sides. So hold and don't proceed. So he said Amin before the Imam finished Wal-Dhalin. You're not going to be follower of any Shaykh. You're going to be following your own self. So hold your breath. When the Imam says Wal-Dhalin, finished, just wait, because sometimes the Imam takes his breath. Takes his breath. So wait for that triggering of the then you go Amin. And I don't know how many massages they apply this into, for example, Salat al-Jumu'ah. You have to really not test it in the normal regular prayer. It's in the Jumu'ah. The only masjid I could really used to say that they used to do it in the Jumu'ah is the masjid where the Shaykh used to go to it, Shaykh al-Albani. And because the Imam at that masjid, every Jumu'ah, before the prayer starts, he reminds the people, don't precede me with Amin. And he's begging them. Now, most of the people, they will not, but there are flying customers who are on autopilot. As soon as the Imam says, Wal-Dhal, hits the lamb before he finishes the Een, he's already had finished his Amin. Now, also, there are people delay their Amin so much because they are saying their own dua. So when the Imam says Wal-Dhalin, they say, oh Lord, give me a wife, oh Lord, give me a house, oh Lord, give me a car. So the people, when they say Amin, they're saying Amin on his own dua. And that is not as well from the Sunnah. So saying dua of yourself before the people says Amin, that is not right. And don't you ever think that they are saying Amin to your own dua. No, that's not right. Okay, so after this, alhamdulillah, now we're going to the thing is, which is, do you say it Amin loud or you don't say it Amin loud? It's a controversial issue because we don't have really a powerful proof to say that the people behind the Imam to say Amin loud. Now we say Amin with the Imam, but to say it loud, we say the Imam, he says it loud, but the people, does they say it loud? You know that Abu Hanifa's opinion, rahimahullah, is that the people know the Imam would say it loud. So Wal-Dhalin, everybody will what? Be quiet. We have proved beyond any doubt that the Imam would say Amin loud because of the hadith, is authentic. But for the people to say Amin loud, Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah, he was fluctuating even in his book when he said what to say Amin loud or not loud until he had settled after he had read in Ibn Hazm rahimahullah some narrations regarding Abi Hurairah and other companion as well, where this companion narrates, and Abdullah ibn Zubayr, I remember now, that they used to recite the Amin and the people used to recite Amin behind them loudly to the extent that the masjid would have like a shake, because of the Amin, shake. The other hadith, which is the last one, yeah.
In another hadith, then they then say Amin and Allah will answer you. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam also used to say the Jews do not envy you over anything as much as they envy you over the salutation and Amin behind the Imam.
So he says, if you in another hadith said, say Amin and Allah will respond to you, yes. And the Jews did not envy you on anything more than they have envied you on saying Salam, which is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and that means saying Amin. So that means we have to stick to those two and make sure that we don't really lose them. Now, have you got any notes there? I'm sure you have.
The Amin of the congregation behind the Imam should be done loudly and simultaneously with the Imam, not before him as the majority of the worshippers do, nor after him. This is what I finally find most convincing, as I have explained in some of my works, among them Sislat al-Hadith al-Da'ifa number 952 volume 2, which has been printed and published by the grace of Allah, and Sahih al-Targhib al-Tarhib volume 1 page 205.
As for the ta'meen of the ma'mumeen, loud, we find it as well from the actions of Abu Hurairah and Abdullah ibn Zubayr, as I said. And you'll find that in Sislat al-Da'ifa volume number 2, hadith or page, I would say 369. So that is as well to add to the power of saying that people, they say Amin loud. Now we come to the other title, which is the recitation of the Prophet ﷺ after the Fatiha. What does he recite after the Fatiha? Now,
the recitation after Al-Fatiha. Next, he sallallahu alayhi wasallam will recite another surah after Al-Fatiha, making it long sometimes, and on other occasions making it short because of travel, cough, illness, or the crying of infants. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu said, he sallallahu alayhi wasallam made it, the recitation, short one day in the dawn prayer. In another hadith, he sallallahu alayhi wasallam prayed the morning prayer and recited the two shortest surah in the Quran. So it was said, O Messenger of Allah, why did you make it short? He sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, I heard the crying of a child, and I supposed that his mother was praying with us, so I wanted to free his mother from him. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam also used to say, I enter into prayer intending to lengthen it.
Before that, so the first thing that the Prophet ﷺ has been indicated here, that he used to recite another surah after the Fatiha. Sometimes he prolongs it, sometimes he does not. That is according not just to only the trouble, or because of the illness, or because of the child's crying, but also because of the prayer. So we add to it as well because of the prayer itself, depending which prayer he's praying. Because some of the prayers, the norm is to be short prayers, some of them are to be long prayers. So if we can really discuss which one is the longest in terms of prayer-wise, so we find, for example, that the Prophet ﷺ, he used to make the longest is to be the Dhuhr prayer. Dhuhr prayer is the longest, and then we have Asr prayer, which is half of that. Also, the Fajr prayer, most of the time is long, but the Prophet, in this incident and another incident, he prayed the Fajr prayer so short that the companions asked, why, Messenger of Allah, you recited it short? He said, I've heard the crying of a baby, and I thought his mother is with him, so I thought that she wants his mother to be ready to look after him, and that is why she will not be concentrating on her own prayer. So that is, we said, the Dhuhr and the Asr, and also after that comes in the Isha. And after the Isha comes in the last one, which is the Maghrib. The Maghrib prayer is the shortest, but sometimes the Prophet ﷺ, he would make the Maghrib prayer longer by he had recited Tulay al-Tulayn, which is the Surah Al-A'raf in them. So in that case we say that the Maghrib prayer, usually it is not really long, but man can make it long. Not the sunnah to make the Maghrib all the time on the short surahs, but it is not long. So the Isha as well is not long. It is from the Qisar al-Mufassal, which is the last raka'at, the last surah, and that is why he told Mu'adh ibn Jabal, don't recite except like similar to سبح اسم ربك الأعلى, وهل أتاك حديث الغاشية والشمس وضحاها, all of these chapters. So if you recite from Baqarah in the Isha, is no problem as long as you don't really take a long recitation. So if you recited, for example, half a page or quarter of a page, that's acceptable, inshallah. Now,
he sallallahu alaihi wasallam also used to say, I enter into prayer intending to lengthen it, but I hear the crying of a child, so I shorten my prayer because I know how deeply his mother feels about his crying.
So the Prophet ﷺ, in this hadith, it looks like that he prepares his recitation beforehand. Even though he's the Prophet of Allah, even the Quran in his heart is that being fixed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no memorization being taken in his heart. It's just inputted in his heart. Yet, he prepares it because he said, I wanted to prolong it. That means I'm already beforehand I have already intended to prolong the prayer. So I have, when he said intended to prolong the prayer, that means I have chosen which surah to read and how much from that surah to read as well. And it's very good for the Imam every time that he wants to lead the prayer to make sure that he is ready for the recitation. He had prepared not just to come to the prayer and then suddenly, which surah I'm going to read, and then he end up to make mistakes. And he says that the Prophet of Allah said, I would hear the child crying. It tells us here that the children are to be brought, and no harm for that. You have a footnote for that, sir? I'm sure you have a footnote.
Ahmed, with the Sahih Isnad, which is the first hadith about the child crying, freeing the mother for him. Ahmed, with the Sahih Isnad, the other hadith was transmitted by Ibn Abi Dawood in Al-Musannaf. This and other similar hadith contain permission for infants to enter the mosque. As for the hadith...
Infants or children?
It says infants here.
Yeah, children.
Similar hadith contain permission for children to enter the mosque. As for the hadith on many lips, keep your small children away from our mosques, it is da'if and cannot be used for proof at all.
The hadith says keep your children and keep your insane people away from the masjid. جنبوا صبيانكم ومجانينكم المساجد. Now,
among those who have declared it da'if is are Ibn al-Jawzi, Mundhiri, al-Haythami,
Hajar al-Asqalani, wal-Busiri. Now,
Abdul Haq al-Ishbili said it is baseless.
Right. Also, so we learn from this that the bringing of the children is allowed. But I bring the child if I need to bring him. It doesn't mean I bring the child, that is, to make the child who doesn't know about the prayer, to make every time the people sick, and make the Imam sick. Here the Prophet ﷺ, he had heard the child crying. So the good opinion about that person, he has nobody to look after the child, and that's why he brought him with him. But if you have somebody to look after the baby, and you brought the baby with you, I don't think the people next to you are like that. And everybody brought their babies, people will not come to the masjid because they can't hear the Imam reciting, they can't concentrate on their recitation. And if you look at this as well, the Prophet ﷺ said, I wanted to make his mother, he didn't say his father. So this is even worse when the father brings his baby. The mother, amongst the mothers and the women, is most acceptable. And there will be tolerance to some extent. Yes, there will be complaint from the women, but believe me, whatever goes into behind that wall where the sisters are, if it goes into the men's here, they will not take it. And I'm not joking for this. If whatever goes behind, it goes here, what it goes there, my wife tells me, my daughters tell me that chaos. The women, even they talk while they're praying. So the men, they will not take it because they are people who are not being created to have that sort of patience and emotions toward the child. Very provocative. They are on edge. They could tolerate once, twice, and then that's it. And then they will speak up. Why did you bring your baby? Why did you bring your child? So don't bring the child unless you have no one to look after him. Unless it is essential to bring him. Otherwise, you only bring him if he had been grown up to such an extent that he knows the etiquette of the prayer, not to start jumping on people's backs and poke them and kick them and all of that. Because the people will take it for a certain time, but one child, one day, while I was doing the prayer, he took my microphone. He ran away with it. He's ran off. When he took the microphone, ran off. And I told that person, please don't bring child with you. It's like he's bringing him deliberately. But after that, he didn't bring it because khalas, finishing the story. So he took, there was a microphone for the one for the ruku', for the sujud. He's taken that and he took it. So the children, they don't really keep them with you. They're going to cause, as I said, nonsense to nuisance to people. Would you like to? Just a bit. Just a bit. Uncle, when you feel there is something on your face, tell me. If you feel something done to your face, tell me. Right. Also, the Prophet ﷺ sympathizing. Now, do we understand from this that, for example, if the person is in his ruku', the imam, people had entered and he could hear them, and he knows that if you caught up with the ruku', that they caught up with what? The Raka. People tends to be able to hurry a bit. Does the imam, or from the sunnah for him to wait until the people come? The Shaykh, he said, we could use this somehow. And the Prophet was responsive, okay, to the people who are doing things behind. So if somebody was crying, then he would shorten the prayer. So the imam, out of ta'awun ala al-birr, cooperating to do the good, while he's in ruku', he could hear people coming in. Not today, so it was to prolong it a bit, okay, for these people to come. Wallahi, if he prolonged it a bit, he will kill something called rushing to the prayer. Why do people rush to the prayer when the imam is in the ruku'? Because they know you don't wait. You don't gonna wait, I know. And that is why they might shout, please wait until I join the prayer. But if the imam waited a bit, and the people knows that he always ruku' is mashallah, he will come, say Allahu Akbar, and his ruku' is nicely, and he knows that the imam is going to wait. So that's a good thing to learn from the Prophet of Allah. He intended to make it a long recitation, but baby cried, he shortened it. You intended to say Sami Allah liman hamid and cut your ruku', but you heard the person coming, just a bit, 2, 3, 4 seconds. People are not going to complain. 2, 3, 4 seconds for him to make his ruku' so he could catch up with the Raka. All of that from hadith. Hadith, the following one.
He sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to start from the beginning of a surah, completing it most of the time.
So this is as well, in most of his times, he would read from the beginning of the surah and he'd finish it. Now we'd finish it whether it's in 2 Raka or 1 Raka. We're going to see, sometimes he divides in between Raka, sometimes in each Raka we recite a surah, sometimes he recites 2 surah in each Raka. So that is depending upon you. So he used to start from the beginning of the surah, and he would, that's most of his time. So it's not really right that if I come to that prayer, and I know my imam never ever started from the beginning, or very rare start from the beginning. He start from the end all the time. That's not right. So the imam is supposed to be, most of his time is to start from the beginning of the surah and to finish it, regardless how short is the surah. So, if a person came and he led us to pray, إِلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ, where did he start from? He skipped number 1 verse. He's allowed to do that, but is that right? I mean, is that from the sunnah? إِلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ إِلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ as well. So we say that even though it's allowed, but it's not from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And also he says, أَعْطُوا, give.
He sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say, give every surah its share of ruku' and sujud.
So every surah that you memorize, give it a share from your ruku', from your sujud. Go on.
And in another narration, every surah should have a rak'ah.
And every surah should be in a rak'ah. But as well,
sometimes he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would divide the surah into 2 rak'ah, and sometimes he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would repeat the whole surah in the 2nd rak'ah.
That's mashallah. 1 surah in 1 rak'ah and repeat the same surah in the 2nd rak'ah. Just before I go ahead, did you understand when he said give every surah what? Its portion?
Its share of ruku' and sujud.
What does that mean? Is it the length of the ruku' and the sujud? No, it's not. It's not because of that. It's actually ruku' and sujud means the prayer. So each surah has to be participating in your prayer. Do you understand me? The ruku' and sujud means the prayer. It doesn't mean you recite in the ruku' or you sujood, or doesn't mean that you prolong the ruku' as long as the recitation of yours. But it says that every ruku' and sujood, that means a salah, is to have its, some portions of your prayer, of your surah. That if you memorize surah, it's better to give that surah that surah is not complaining. Why don't you give me to that recitation in your prayer? So if you recited, for example, the last juz of Amma. So why don't you just give Amma and give Abasa, another surah, and it's always Amma, and then Abasa complaining, where's my share for my prayer? That's what it is. Yes. Now,
sometimes he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would combine 2 or more surah in one rak'ah.
well, like for example, he recited قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدْ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ in one surah. So that as well, to make 2 surahs in, or 3 surahs in, what? In one rak'ah. Now,
one of the Ansar used to lead them in the mosque of Quba, and every time he recited a surah for them, he would begin with قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدْ until it ends, and then recite another surah with it, and then he would do this in every rak'ah. Because of this, his people spoke to him, saying, you begin with this surah, and then you do not regard it as enough until you recite another one. You should either recite it only or leave it and recite another one. He said, I will not leave it. If you do not mind me leading you with it, I shall carry on. But if you do not like it, I shall leave you.
what an iman. Go on.
They knew that he was one of the best, and they did not like to be led by anyone else. So when the Prophet ﷺ came to them, they told him the story. And he ﷺ said, oh, so and so, what stops you from doing what your people ask you to? What makes you recite this surah in every rak'ah? He radiallahu anhu said, I love this surah. And he ﷺ said, your love for it will enter you into the garden.
All right. Now, this is an imam who is in Quba. Quba is not more than 8 miles away from the Masjid al-Madinah of the Prophet. And this is the Masjid of Quba, where it's a well-known masjid where the Prophet used to go on Saturday after the Jumu'ah, I should say on As-Sabt after the Jumu'ah, and he would go there and he would check upon those people who did not attend the Jumu'ah in his masjid. And he used to pray 2 Raka in that masjid and say that any person praying 2 Raka in that masjid is equivalent to making a Umrah. The Imam there, he used to recite the Fatiha, and then he would recite another surah in each rak'ah. So in each rak'ah, surah and then a Fatiha as well after it. So his companions, they said to him, you are starting this surah, we see that you should really start with that surah, okay? And you should not really start another surah, or recite the other surah without the surah قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. So either you recite قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ and that's it, or you leave قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ and recite the other surah that you recite after Qur'an. But you don't make قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, another surah, and then second rak'ah قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, another surah. What do we gain from this? Before we continue, we gain this from this as well. Number one, that the companions, when they see something new, they would object. It's like a bid'ah. It's for them, this is a bid'ah. That's why they objected. So that's number one benefit, that because they have seen something that they have never seen from the Prophet of Allah, from the companions, okay, it's a bid'ah. That's why they objected. We notice as well from this that this man is definitely reciting the surah, not the order of the Quran. Do you understand why? Because he starts قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, and the other surah is going to be what? Before قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Cannot be قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِالْفَلَقِ وَقُلْ أَعُوذُ بِالنَّاسِ. So that is as well to tell us in this surah, because he done this, that he made the surahs not in the order of the Quran, which the Prophet of Allah does as well, and many times. So you could start a surah, which is like, for example, let's say you started the surah An-Nisa in the first rak'ah, and you went to Ali Imran or Al-Baqarah in the first rak'ah, in the second rak'ah, no problem. We learn from this as well that the person in his ibadah, he made what he made, that person, he will, that person, when he made what he made, if he made it wrongly, then the Prophet ﷺ would correct it. So we understand from this as, you could say, a default, basically. that person 100% sure. If he was doing something wrong, there will be someone to tell the Prophet ﷺ what he's doing, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will correct that prayer. So he had understood that the door is open to recite more than one surah in one rak'ah. And he must have been as well with the Prophet ﷺ long enough to know that it's no harm to recite a surah with a surah. Because we read from the hadith before, he said sometimes he would recite what? 2 surah in one rak'ah. So he has some knowledge. That's by default. We have to say that in order to have a good opinion about the companion, not to say that he's an innovator. Okay? So this is the default option of this, that the companion, he must have seen the Prophet of Allah. If he had as well done wrong, he knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell his Prophet in order to correct him. We know from this hadith as well, up to now, that this Imam is not on payroll. Do you understand me? He works for the sake of Allah. Because if he's on payroll, he will be saying, oh, okay, Allah, I will leave Qul, whatever you want, I'll do it. You want me to recite what? Qul a'udhu falaq? Okay, Qul a'udhu falaq. Because he said to them, either you leave me to do what I do, or you go and look for somebody else. This is the strong tawakkul upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's not on payroll. Huh? Yes? Because the Imam's on payroll, the scheme. Always the company, the administration should say, the company always strangle him from like this, do like that, otherwise chuck you out. That's most of the cases. I'm not saying in every case. And that's why the Imam is miskin. He's under the thumb. Do you understand me? Or not to say under the foot. Okay, he can't really say what he wants to say. So the Imam said, okay, you go find somebody else if you don't like it. I will keep to what I'm doing. So he is right. Also, we learn from this that the person does not have to submit to the opinion of more than person that he comes to him. So lots of people came to him to tell him that, and he's on his own. He said, no, I believe what I'm doing is right. Why he believes it is all right? Because he loves that surah, Qul huwallahu ahad. He's particular that surah. And the Prophet of Allah, he repeated the surah in one of the occasions. He repeated surah in Salat al-Fajr. He repeated a surah twice in each rak'ah. So he repeated once in the rak'ah and repeated again in the second rak'ah. Which surah is it? إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا. He repeated in the first rak'ah and repeated in the second rak'ah. So he must have as well learned from the Prophet ﷺ. He loves the surah. And by the way, another hadith, that surah, sifatun, sifat al-Rahman. It's a sifa. This is the word sifa, which some of the dua, they deny upon the use of sifat, attributes of Allah. No. The Prophet ﷺ said sifa, sifat al-Rahman. This is the description of Allah in it. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدْ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدْ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Or وَلَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ 4 and وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا. 5 things. Then he says, if you want, go and get another Imam. But look at that. They said they don't want to have another one because he's the best. That means the other people, they're able, but okay, look, but because he's the best, they didn't like somebody else to lead them. You tell me who's in earth these days. They would do such a thing when their Imam said, you look for somebody else, I'll stick to my, okay, go get lost. We'll get somebody else. True or no? But because he's the best, he said, no. That means the Sharia above everything. Because he's the best in recitation, even though they are not reluctant of what he's doing, they're not approve of what he's doing, they submitted. Wallah, they said, no, it's only companions can do that. They must have got like another reciter. Maybe he's more beautiful recitation, but he's half of maybe he's the best in recitation. Khalas, they wanted to lead, even though they hate that thing in him. And they could easily chuck him out and bring somebody else. They didn't want to. And he says, فَلَمَّا أَتَاهُمُ النَّبِيِّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. When the Prophet ﷺ came to them, they told him. What do you understand from that? These people these days, if they complain about the Imam and the administration, let's say in Birmingham, they will take a car and fill it up with all these complaint people and go to Birmingham. to complain for the administration. Wallahi, even if they got work, they leave their job just for the sake of complaining. Wallah. And I know that because I know him and he would, to praise someone, they will not do it. To praise the Imam, to say it's good, no, they don't do it. But to complain about him, oof. So they did not go to the Prophet, he's only 8 miles away. It's not fun. They waited until the Prophet will come to them, and they told him. Now the Prophet ﷺ, before he tells them whether it's right or wrong, he wants to understand, why don't you fulfill what your brothers are telling you? Now he said, your ashabak, your companions, your brothers are telling you. Why? Now I'm asking, listen to me, I'm asking, doing this, what he's doing, reading the Qul Huwallahu and others, is it compulsory? Is it compulsory? Is it recommended? Is it recommended? No. It is what? Permissible. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying to him, like, why don't you leave the permissible for the sake of what? Satisfying your what? Your brothers. So he's saying to him, why don't you listen to them? What they command? That means what they're doing to asking you is actually right, correct. So when he had the answer, so he said, what is that? And again, why is it that you want to that particular surah? Another question meaning that if you change the surah, maybe the people will not complain. A very second example, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, another surah, Qul A'udhu Falaq, and the second Raka, another surah. They will not be coming. It means Qul Huwallahu Ahad. Why? You want to understand. When the Prophet was being told, I love it. Prophet didn't want to drag it from that love. He didn't say to him, okay, just for the sake of, softening the hearts of your brothers, go on. He said, okay, Wallahi, your love to it had made you enter paradise. Now, who told the Prophet of Allah that? Revelation. Because you can't say this like this. It's revelation. That means he is in Jannah. Even though he's not been named, that companion, and he's from the 10 glad tidings companion being given glad tidings of paradise, which have been named. This was another one being given paradise. Your love to it and made you to enter paradise. So you have to love it in order to do it, not because you want to imitate the companion. Do you understand that? A love, which is a proper love. He loves it. He loves that surah. And if those people who are behind you, they're going to do fitna, it would be better to leave it. Because those people did not do fitna. They are people, they said, oh, well, we'll leave it to lead, even though he's done what's done. So those people, they're not be like acting like us. If I did this, for example, in a masjid, they might chuck me out, bring another Sufi to lead the prayer. So I would say, no, I would sacrifice that permissibility. I'm going to read the Qul Huwallahu all the time, just for the sake of to keep my position, rather than to fill it up with somebody who's Ahlul Bid'ah. Do you understand that? And then there will be more of harm onto the masjid. After this, alhamdulillah, we have come to the last thing, which is Jam'uhu Bayn al-Nadhar. That is, the last thing we're going to discuss, inshallah. Not all of it, just a bit of it. Go ahead. Jam'uhu Bayn al-Nadhar.
Combining similar surahs and others in one rak'ah. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to combine the pairs of the mufassal surahs. So he sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to recite one of the following pairs of surahs in one rak'ah. Surah Ar-Rahman and Surah An-Najm.
He used to combine what it says here? The title, combining between?
Combining similar surahs and others in one rak'ah.
What do you mean similar surah? Does it have a footnote?
Surahs which are similar in meaning.
Yes.
That is, they both contain advice,
yes,
commandments, yep, or stories.
Yep.
And the three, which is Mufassal, is these are agreed to end at the end of the Quran, and soundest view is that they begin with Qaf. Surah Qaf.
No. So from Qaf is the Mufassal, and there is Tuwal Mufassal, Wasat al-Mufassal, and Qisar al-Mufassal. There is long Mufassal, and Wasat and Qisar. Go ahead.
Surah Ar-Rahman and Surah An-Najm. Al-Qamar and Al-Haqqa. Tur and Dhariyat,
Okay, Ar-Rahman, what did you say first one?
and An-Najm.
An-Najm. Ar-Rahman, that means in the first rak'ah, and the Najm is in the second rak'ah. And you know for a fact, in terms of order, An-Najm comes first. Comes first by 2 surahs. So Najm, he recited it in the second rak'ah, even though it comes before the Rahman in the Quran sequence. You understand that? To share with you. He read Ar-Rahman, then he went back to An-Najm. Again?
Again the list. Surah Ar-Rahman and Surah An-Najm,
In one rak'ah.
Al-Qamar and Al-Haqqa.
In another rak'ah. So here in one rak'ah, he did this 2 surahs. And these surahs are not in the sequence. Second rak'ah, he made it in the sequence, which is Iqtarabat, Surah Al-Qamar, which is well before Al-Haqqa. Haqqa comes later on. Now,
Al-Tur and Al-Dhariyat,
Tur al-Dhariyat. Al-Tur, which comes a surah before Al-Dhariyat. Al-Dhariyat, so it comes a surah before. So the Dhariyat, he put it in the second, even though it comes what? Before that.
Before.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's like, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِالْفَلَقِ. He started with قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِالْفَلَقِ, then قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Exactly here he said. He started with the Tur, then he started with the Dhariyat. If the order says the Dhariyat, then the Tur. Okay? Now,
Al-Waqi'ah and Al-Qalam.
Al-Waqi'ah al-Qalam, and that is in the order of the Quran. Now,
Al-Ma'arij and Al-Naziyat.
Al-Ma'arij and Al-Nazi'at also in the order.
Al-Mutaffifin and Abasa.
Is that?
Reverse.
No, it is not. It's against the order. Al-Muddathir, go on.
Al-Muddathir and Al-Muzammil.
Is that in the order?
No.
No, it's not in the order.
Al-Dahr and Al-Qiyamah.
Is that in the order?
No.
Surah before, go on.
Al-Naba and Al-Mursalat.
Now,
And Dukhan and Al-Takwir.
that's in the order. Now,
Sometimes he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would combine surahs from the 7 tiwal, the long surahs, such as Al-Baqarah, Al-Nisa, Al-Imran, and in one rak'ah during night prayer. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say, the most excellent prayer is one with long standing.
long standing, that means long recitation. Now,
When he sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited
أليس ذلك بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى.
translation of the verse 40 of Surah Al-Qiyamah,
Last verse of Surah
last
Al-Qiyamah.
verse, does he not have the power to give life to the dead? He sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say,
سبحان كفى.
glory be to you, of course. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he recited,
سبح اسم ربك الأعلى.
glorify the name of your
First
Lord,
verse of Surah Al-A'la.
he
would say,
sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say,
Subhana
Subhana Rabbiyal A'la.
And this is, by the way, in Farida and Nafila. In Farida what? And Nafila. Whether it's voluntary or obligatory. There is other hadith which people have read, for example, in Surah Al-Teen, there is not authentic. أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين, it's not authentic. When you say فبلا, but you say سبحانك فبلا at the end of Surah Al-Qiyamah, and سبحان ربي الأعلى at the beginning of Surah Al-A'la, and that is in both voluntary and obligatory. By this we stop here inshallah, and we will start by next week. I will give you time for the questions and answers. And as I said, our prayer will stay the same. 7:45 is when we start. So we started today 7:45, but the microphone's delayed. It's about 10 minutes. Now,
How do you reconcile with either saying Amin behind the Imam and the loud prayer? One was too in the Hanafi masjid, you don't say Amin loud. Then you try to reconcile with that need for Imams to be followed.
how can we do this Amin to synchronize with the Imam if the Imam is not doing it loudly? That tells us 2 things. Number one, that the ta'meen and your Amin with the Amin is only in the loud recitation, because in the silent recitation you're not going to know when the Imam had finished his Fatiha or not, do you? You're not going to know that. So only the loud recitation. So thank you very much for reminding that. It's only the loud recitation. Now he's saying that in the loud recitation as well, we have a problem. Have a Hanafi masjid where the Imam does not say Ameen. What should we say in this time? Now, if your Hanafi Imam, whom you think he is, qualified Imam, learned Imam, an Imam who is not just basically doing that because if he is not doing it, he will be chucked out, or he's an ignorant person, then you will not follow. But if he's a respectable Imam, you imagine Abu Hanifa is leading you, you're not supposed to say Amin loud. Okay? So you say Amin just like him. So if Abu Hanifa is leading you, and you are behind Abu Hanifa to say Amin, I don't think you will be able to do that. Because this is a scholar and you respect the scholar, so you will not say the Amin loud. But now, most of the Imams of those Hanafi masajid, they are not like Abu Hanifa. And I would not, they are saying, making taqleed, they are making blind taqleed. We say that there's no harm by taqleed. By the way, anybody who says taqleed is wrong, it's not right. The blind taqleed is wrong. Taqleed is, you have to do taqleed, regardless who you are, you have to make taqleed. You're not a prophet. Okay, each person, even the scholar would make some taqleed in some particular issue. But the taqleed we regard it as a necessity. We take from it once we need. The other people takes it as in what? Element which has to be there. You have to be muqallid, you cannot be mujtahid, no way. So you can't, you have to take Abu Hanifa, that's stick to Abu Hanifa, to the death. Even if you think he's wrong, you have to take his opinion. That's what is taqleed. So that's the taqleed we said. So regarding the masjid which the Imam, he is not saying Amin, you say the Amin after Waradali. So it's like you imagine that your Imam is leading, you know. You're going to say Waradali, he's going to hold for a portion of a second, half a second, and then you say Amin. Make sure you don't say Amin before he finishes Waradali. That's the whole issue. But as I said, if I'm in a Hanafi masjid, which I know the Imam is, mashallah, I will not raise up my voice in my Amin, I will be quiet. And if I'm in a masjid where maybe it's only me in that masjid, and I'm in Pakistan or these countries, I'll be scared to say Amin loud maybe. Could be my own saying Amin, and everybody looking at me. True or not? Yeah, everybody looking at me. So I'll just be quiet. Now, the Amin, should the sister, of course, good question. The Amin of the sisters as well, they should say it loud. Amin is loud, but not then shouting loud. When it says loud, the word loud, I don't know what do we understand from that loud. So the loud of the Amin. So the Amins, because the sisters now, they should do it and audible to themselves. The sisters, when they make takbir for Umrah, what do they do it? Loud as well. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik. The voice of the women are not awrah. The voice of the women is awrah. Unless they speak in a tone which they know that it's a soft tone, that's when the heart of the person starts. It plays with the heart of the man. But there's a tone, yes, now, like an army, you know, soldier. So that's no problem. So if you teach, you have to speak like this. Now, yes, no problem. But if you answer the phone, what can I do for you, darling? No. That's not right. And to start laughing with the person, that's not right. Because even though she's innocent, I know that the Prophet is innocent. Those are the al-ghafilat. As Allah says, mu'minat al-ghafilat. They are not aware that there are wolves around them. Huh? They are naive and simple, and so they should be really careful. Because they don't know what is behind that sort of face waiting for them. So it's just very careful that the women should be, straightforward and answer. Because Aisha used to answer the questions for the men. She'd have fatwa. She was young when she was getting the fatwa after that. When the Prophet died, she was 18. Yes, she's considered to be the mother. They're not allowed to interact with her. But the thing is still, there's shaitan there. There is what? Shaitan. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He asked them, لا تخضعن في القول, don't say things which are making it like softer, or making it فيطمع الذي في قلبه مرض, and the one who's got sickness in his heart will have, I think I will, this woman she's after me, or she's giving me a chance, or she's opening the gate. Okay, so she has to speak in the right manner, that tone. The reward? Does the Imam get the Amin? Of course he does it. That's why the scholars, they say, which is better, the Imam or the Mu'adhin? Because of that, they say, the The Imam is better. In the difference of who is better, Imam or Mu'adhin. One of the things that makes the Imam is better is that. Because he's going to get his sins, previous sins, because the angels, they say, Amin within. So if he's going to be deprived from that, he will say, I don't want to be Imam, I want to be Ma'moom. Now. Jazakallah. Tfaddal.
Mentioned when you said ayahs are mentioned saying Subhanallah. Is that when the Imam gives you time, like something
No, they don't have to give you time because Subhanakallah doesn't take 1 second. Subhanakallah. If they combine the ayah, then they're not really rare, but I'm just saying they combine the following verse. It's going to take breath, isn't it? Subhanakallah. You don't say it when he's talking. But in that case, in that particular case, I don't know, did you go to somebody?
Yeah.
How did they say? How? Say it.
Yeah.
Okay, wait until you hear the 5th verse. So, Sunday is not a big, but it's not Subhanakallah, you confused me, that's why. That's why. Because the other one is in the last of Surah Al-Qiyamah. How do they link it? I've never seen them linking it to the following surahs. Now. Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah, just wait. And by the way, it's a sunnah, it's not compulsory. Now. For the... If the Imam did not leave a space, yeah, you have to wait until he finishes. He gives you a space after 3 or 4, but whenever he finishes. So he stops and then he gives you space. So it's not because that's it. But don't speak while he is talking, because you have to be listening all the time. Now, uncle, you're having a problem. Is it because of the wind at the door? Close the door, please. Yes, uncle.
Please give me, I cannot remember that I say there is no Salah if you do not say, if you not recite.
Fatiha.
I've heard it several times, and I've heard you saying something different. What do I do?
You said that you have heard from someone, regardless who he is and where he comes out from, that the person, if he does not say the Fatiha, that his prayer will not be valid. And I think I have said that here, uncle, a number of times, that this is something that if I want to make a book about it, you have a big 2-3 volumes regarding the controversial issue. That is, do you recite the Fatiha or you don't recite the Fatiha in the loud recitation? You have to recite the Fatiha when you are reciting on your own. Whether you are on your own as an Imam or on your own without Jama'ah. You have to recite the Fatiha. Whether it's loud or silent. You have to recite the Fatiha. Second issue, that you have to recite the Fatiha if you are behind the Imam in that silent recitation. You have to recite it. Third issue, you have to recite the Fatiha even if the Imam is in the loud recitation but you can't hear his recitation because the microphone is not working, you're too far, or whatever. Then a fourth case where it's an optional to read the Fatiha if the Imam is reciting in the loud recitation, yet he left a gap, which is a long gap, between the Fatiha and the following surah, then it's an optional for you to recite what? The Fatiha. Now we're left with the fifth case, which is the Imam is reciting loud, and you could hear him, and hear his Fatiha, and he's not leaving you a gap, and after he had finished the Fatiha, he takes a breath, and then he put a second gear, and he goes into the second following surah. Then in that case we say, you don't read the Fatiha. That case is a controversial, uncle. Well, we have mentioned that the Prophet of Allah said, فَإِذَا قَرَأَ وَإِذَا قَرَأَ فَانْصِتُ. When you recite, you're going to be insat. Insat means you have to be quiet. And it means as well to hear. So you have to quiet, and to say a word, and to hear. There's two things. So if I do recite, then I will not be following that command of the Prophet. Also Allah says, if the Quran is to be recited, فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا. Listen to it and be quiet. And also we say to the people who say that to recite the Fatiha after the surah, to recite the Fatiha when the Imam is reciting loudly, I say to them, how do you understand your own Fatiha? And how do you be able to understand the Imam's recitation while you're reciting the Fatiha? I cannot understand that. If the Imam is reciting a surah and you're reciting the Fatiha, would you be able to understand your Fatiha? On top of that, understand the surah the Imam is reciting? Is that right? I don't think so. So, without any further discussion, we say it's a controversial issue, but we say to them, you don't have to recite the Fatiha if the Imam is reciting loudly and you could hear his recitation. And we, Alhamdulillah, and you remember, Uncle, we said, if the person came when the Imam is in his ruku', what do? You say Allahu Akbar, and you don't recite Fatiha, and then another Allahu Akbar to go to ruku' in order to catch up with the Raka. But if you said you don't recite the Fatiha, you have to recite it, then you have to do it for that Raka. You cannot count that Raka to be a Raka because you missed the Fatiha. But for us, we said that is sufficient to catch up with the ruku', even did not catch up with the Fatiha. Now, is that for the
What that Amin actually means?
what is Amin? It means, oh Allah granted. It's like somebody's making dua, supplication, because all the Fatiha is supplication. Half of it is for praising Allah and half of it to ask Allah. So when you say Amin, oh Lord, respond to what is in that dua. That's what it means. Now,
Just after Salah, sometimes when you do the dhikr, during the making dhikr, you probably lose the wudu. What shall you do? Continue or stop?
after the prayer,
After the prayer, and you do
after the prayer, if I am making my dhikr, I lose my wudu. Losing the wudu does not make it disallowed not to do the dhikr. And that is no doubt about that. Because the hadith of Aisha, Prophet of Allah, he used to make dhikr of Allah on all his circumstances. Whether he is losing his wudu or losing his major wudu, which is major defilement, that is the sexual defilement. He would as well make dhikr of Allah.
even reading the surah during the dhikr.
Reading the Quran is part of the dhikr of Allah. Dhikr of Allah is a big umbrella. Underneath it, recitation of the Quran. Recitation of the Quran can be recited even if the person is not on tahara. Hadith qunfud, which is correct, but that talks about which is what is recommended. Prophet of Allah, after he had urinated, somebody said to him, Salamu alaikum. He did not respond to alaikum salam because salam is the name of Allah. He went to make wudu, and then he said, wa alaikum salam. What prevented me of replying to salam is I was not on tahara. But that is not compulsory. Because, number one, if everybody were going to do this, I don't think anybody would wait for you to go make wudu. Okay, to respond to salam, be gone. I'm not going to wait for you to go make wudu. Also, the tahara was mentioned one day that he just put his hand on the wall, Prophet Allah. He said, wa alaikum salam. Now that putting on the hand on the wall, does it make him allowed to go and do the prayer? No, it's just like temporarily tahara, just for the sake of what? Salutation. And Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, he was on janaba. He sat, and when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to him salam, he sat beside him, he did not return. Why? Abu Hurairah said, I am on impurity, najas. He said, al-mu'min la yajus. The believer does not get impure. Okay? So you are allowed to make your adhkar even if you are not on tahara. You are allowed to make prostration of tilawah. Even if you are on tahara, not on tahara. You're allowed to make prostration of shukr. You heard something which is good, fall on your face. So prostration of tilawah, that means you're reciting from your memory, even if you're not on tahara. It's a prostration of tilawah, you could make that because it's not salah. It's only the salah. And that's the correct opinion. Allahu Ta'ala a'lam. And as I said, it's controversial. Fadl. Ar-Rahman al-Najm, did he recite it in the layl? Because it says there, in the, when we come to the, look at that. If you open into the recitation of the Dhuhr, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to recite, he said he used to recite long, so وَطَوِّلْ فِي الْأُولَى. Like a long recitation. So this long recitation, when you recite Alif Lam Mim Tanzil al-Sajda, it's like similar to Ar-Rahman in terms of lengthwise. But then you recite it in the Layl or the Dhuhr. I mean, as the Prophet said, make from every surah as a portion for your prayer. Okay, so you could do it in the Dhuhr, you could do it in the Asr. But when you do it in the Dhuhr, make sure that your first rak'ah is longer than the second rak'ah. And the first two rak'ah longer than the last two rak'ah. And the Dhuhr of yours is longer than the Asr of yours. Look at that. First rak'ah longer than the second rak'ah. And both the first and the second longer than the last two rak'ah. And the whole of the Dhuhr is longer than the whole of the Asr. And the Asr in the same details. First rak'ah longer than the second rak'ah. Both two rak'ahs, first one, second one, longer than the third one and the fourth one. But in general, the Asr is less than Dhuhr, almost half, but less than Dhuhr. That's how it is. So if you find the Imam doing this, mashallah, his first rak'ah is always longer than the second. But if his Dhuhr, he's doing first rak'ah shorter, and then the second rak'ah longer, and then the third rak'ah even longer than the first and the second. And there's something wrong here. He doesn't know what he's doing. Or we make them all the same, same time. Says you common mistake, all the same. That's not right as well. And the people see that, for example, prolong the first two rak'ah so much that the Prophet of Allah, he used to make Dhuhr. First rak'ah, person goes to the Baqiyah. Baqiyah is a cemetery. Relieve himself there, in the air low, go to the house, clean himself, come back, still in the first rak'ah. You're talking about 5 to 10 minutes. That's first rak'ah. 5 to 10 minutes. Fine. Now.
About the Sujud of Sahw, which point do you do the two Sajda, and which point do you do two Sajda?
Okay, regarding the Sujud Sahw. Sujud Sahw, for everybody, it doesn't matter whether you do the two sajda before the salutation or after the salutation. All you need to know that if you did it after the salutation, you need to make another salutation. Okay? Again, for Sujud Sahw, regardless of what you do in the prayer, you could do the prostration, the two prostration, before the salutation or after the salutation. But you need to know, if you made the two prostration after the salutation, you have to make another salutation. No tashahhud again. That's in general, as I said. But there are exceptions. And there are things, if you want to apply the sunnah. The exceptions, number one, is that when you make a mistake regarding the middle tashahhud. If you stood up, not completely, in the middle tashahhud, in the middle second rak'ah to the third rak'ah, and you remembered I haven't done the tashahhud, and you sat down, you make tashahhud, and there is no sujud sahw. That's the exception. Other than that, you make sujud sahw. So that is, if you remembered, oh, there is tashahhud, you sit down. But if you completely stood up, then you don't sit down. And then at the end of the prayer, you make the prostrations, the two prostration, which is the for forgiveness. You don't do it. If you stood up, you don't go back for the tashahhud. And at the end of the prayer, you make the two sajda of sahw. Now, when the second issue now, when do you make it? Before or after, if you want to hit the sunnah? As I said, you could do it in both ways, but this is more details. Now, you remember that if you've done something that made the prayer extra, then you do it after. If you made the prayer not extra, less, then you do it before. And you add to it that the middle tashahhud, always if you forget it, you stood up, you do it before. So if, for example, you have made the Asr prayer 2 rak'ah, you made salutation, you remembered after the salutation, and you are up to do 2 rak'ah again. Do you do the 2 sajda before or after?
After. After.
Why after?
Because you have added a salutation.
Very good, it's after. Because you've added the 2 salutation in the middle. So you do it after. Very good. Right, so there's another issue as well. If you are in doubt, how many rak'ah? Is it 3 or 4, 3 or 4? So you are now at the moment, you're not sure, 3 or 4, 3 or 4, 3 or 4. Is it my 4th rak'ah that I've done 3 rak'ah already? Or is it my 3rd rak'ah, I have only done 2 rak'ah? I'm in that mood. and that thought, and I didn't arrive to conclusion, then I would say I am on the third, and I will leave the one which I'm down, because I know that I've done two, but I'm sure have I done the third or not. I drop the third, and then I will do the two sajda before salutation. But if I have arrived to a conclusion, 204, 304, 304, first rakah, I think I remember, second rakah, you're investigating your mind now. And the third rakah, yes, I meet the tashahhud, I remember myself and I stood up for the third rakah. This is the fourth rakah, 100%. Because of that investigation, you pray two sajda after the salutation, because this is extra now. Okay? Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Wa subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka.